Every single morning before the world talks to you, you talk to yourself. And here's the truth most people ignore. Your life doesn't move in the direction of your goals. It moves in the direction of your self-talk. If the first voice you hear every morning is doubt, fear, or stress, you've already lost the day before it even started. So today I'm giving you 5 things you must tell yourself every morning if you want confidence, discipline, and success to become your new normal. Every single morning before you check your phone, before you look at the news, before you let the world tell you who you are and what kind of day you're going to have, there is already a conversation happening in your head, and most people don't even realize it's there. It's quiet, it's automatic, and it's been running for years. That conversation is your self-talk, and whether you like it or not, it is programming your identity. Here's what most people get wrong. They think their identity comes from their past, their circumstances, or their personality. But that's not true. Your identity is built from the words you repeat to yourself so often that your brain starts treating them like facts. When you wake up and the first thing you think is, I'm tired, I'm behind, I don't feel like doing this, your mind doesn't argue with you, it agrees. And then it goes to work proving you right. It looks for reasons to conserve energy, to avoid effort, to stay small. Not because you're lazy, but because your brain's job is to protect the identity you've been reinforcing. Your brain is a meaning-making machine. Whatever you say to yourself, it assumes must be important. So when you say, I'm bad at this, your brain says, got it, and filters out evidence that contradicts that belief. But when you say, I'm learning, or I'm getting better, or I can handle this, your brain starts searching for ways to support that new identity. Same brain, same circumstances, completely different outcome. Think about it this way. If you walked into a gym every day saying, I'm weak, this is pointless, I'll never change, how long do you think you'd last? Now imagine walking in and saying, this is hard, but this is who I am now. I show up, I train, I improve. The weight doesn't change, but you do. And it all starts with the language you use in your own head. Most people wake up and immediately hand the microphone to their fears. They replay yesterday's mistakes. They worry about things that haven't happened yet. They mentally list everything that could go wrong. And then they wonder why they feel anxious, unmotivated, and overwhelmed before the day has even started. You didn't wake up anxious. You talked yourself into it. Your words shape your emotional state, and your emotional state shapes your actions. That's why mornings matter so much. The first thoughts of the day are like setting the thermostat for your mindset. If you start the day in scarcity, doubt, and stress, you spend the rest of the day trying to crawl out of a hole you dug the moment you opened your eyes. And here's the part that really matters. Self-talk isn't about lying to yourself or pretending everything is perfect. It's about choosing language that creates strength instead of weakness. There's a huge difference between saying, I'm overwhelmed, and saying, I have a lot on my plate, but I can prioritize and handle it. One makes you freeze. The other puts you back in control. You don't need to hype yourself up with empty positivity. You need grounded, empowering truth. Saying, this is going to be challenging, but I've handled hard things before, is powerful because it's real. It reminds your nervous system that you are not in danger, that you are capable, that you are not a victim of your day. Over time, these small shifts in language become your identity. You stop being someone who tries and start being someone who does. You stop seeing yourself as reactive and start seeing yourself as intentional. And once your identity changes, your behavior follows naturally. You don't need willpower to act in alignment with who you believe you are. This is why successful people guard their mornings so fiercely. They don't wake up and immediately consume chaos. They create clarity. They speak direction into their day before the world gets a chance to distract them. They decide ahead of time who they are going to be, how they're going to show up, and what standards they will live by. If you don't consciously choose your self-talk, your past will choose it for you. Old fears, old failures, old stories will keep replaying on a loop. But the moment you interrupt that pattern and start speaking intentionally, you begin to rewrite the script, not overnight, not perfectly, but consistently. You don't become confident by waiting to feel confident. You become confident by speaking and acting like the person you are becoming, even when it feels uncomfortable. Identity is built through repetition, and repetition starts with the words you choose every single morning. So before the world speaks, before your phone lights up, before your doubts get loud, make sure you say something that moves you forward, because the way you talk to yourself at the start of the day quietly decides the direction of your life. Most people wake up waiting to feel motivated, and that right there is the trap. They open their eyes and subconsciously ask, do I feel like doing this today? And if the answer is no, they delay, they negotiate, they scroll, they procrastinate. But here's the truth that changes everything. Motivation is not the starting line, it's the byproduct. Discipline is what goes first. Discipline is built before motivation ever shows up, and it's built in the moments when you decide you are regardless of how you feel. Feelings are temporary. They change with sleep, with weather, with stress, with one negative thought. If you let feelings decide your actions, your life will always be inconsistent. That's why the most successful people don't ask, what do I feel like doing today? They ask, what does the person I'm becoming do today? Every morning is a decision point. You are either training your brain to obey comfort, or you are training it to follow commitment. When you hit snooze, when you skip what you said you would do, when you wait for the perfect mood, you're not just avoiding a task. You're reinforcing an identity. You're teaching yourself, I only act when it's easy. And your brain learns that lesson fast. Discipline is not about punishment or force. It's about clarity. It's about removing negotiation from your life. The moment you start negotiating with yourself in the morning, you've already given up control. I'll do it later. I'll start tomorrow. Just 5 more minutes. Those small compromises don't feel dangerous, but they stack up. And over time, they become a habit of self-betrayal. On the other hand, when you decide in advance, this is what I do no matter what, something powerful happens. You reduce mental friction. You stop wasting energy arguing with yourself. The decision is already made. You don't need motivation to brush your teeth. You do it because it's part of who you are. That's what discipline looks like when it's integrated into identity. Most people misunderstand discipline because they associate it with extremes. They think it means grinding nonstop, being rigid, or living without joy. That's not discipline, that's burnout. Real discipline is simple. It's doing the small, necessary things consistently, especially when no one is watching and no one is applauding. Motivation comes and goes, but discipline compounds. Every time you do what you said you would do, even when you don't feel like it, you send a signal to your brain, I can be trusted. And trust in yourself is the foundation of confidence. You don't become confident by thinking positive thoughts. You become confident by proving to yourself over and over again that you follow through. Here's what most people don't realize. The hardest part of discipline is not the action itself. It's the transition. It's the moment between deciding and doing. That's where resistance lies. That's where your mind tries to protect you from discomfort. But once you start, once you move your body, once you take the first step, the resistance fades. Momentum takes over. And suddenly what felt impossible feels manageable. That's why mornings matter so much. The first disciplined action of the day sets the tone for everything that follows. When you win the morning, you don't just check off a task. You establish authority over your own mind. You prove that you are in charge, not your moods, not your excuses, not your past patterns. Discipline is also how you create freedom. That sounds backwards, but it's true. The more disciplined you are with your time, your habits, and your energy, the more freedom you create in your life. Freedom from chaos, freedom from last-minute stress, freedom from regret. Undisciplined lives feel free in the moment, but they are expensive in the long run. And here's the shift that changes everything. Stop trying to be disciplined and start acting from discipline. Stop saying, I need more motivation, and start saying, this is just what I do. Identity-based discipline is powerful because it removes emotion from the equation. You don't rise and fall with how you feel. You move forward because you decided that this is who you are. You don't need to overhaul your entire life to build discipline. You just need to keep one promise to yourself today. One small action, one intentional choice. That's how discipline is built brick by brick. And over time, those bricks become an unshakable foundation. So don't wait to feel ready, because readiness is created through action. Discipline is the decision you make before motivation ever has a chance to speak. One of the biggest reasons people stay stuck isn't because they don't want to change, and it's not because they aren't capable. It's because every morning they wake up and carry yesterday into today. They replay old mistakes, old regrets, old versions of themselves, and without realizing it, they let the past set today's standards. And the problem with that is simple. You cannot build a new life while living by outdated rules. Your past is information, not a life sentence. But most people treat it like an identity. They say things like, that's just how I am, or I've always been this way, or I already messed this up before. And every time you say that, you're telling your brain to stay familiar instead of grow. Familiar feels safe even when it's painful. Growth feels uncertain even when it's necessary. Every single morning you get a choice. You can wake up and let the past define what you expect from yourself, or you can decide what standards you are going to live by today. Standards are powerful because they shift your focus from what happened to what matters now. They move you from regret into responsibility, and responsibility is where your power lies. Most people think change requires a massive breakthrough, some emotional moment where everything finally clicks. But real change is much quieter than that. It's choosing to show up differently today, even if yesterday you didn't. It's choosing not to punish yourself for who you used to be, but also not letting that version of you run the show anymore. Your brain is wired to protect you, not to transform you. So when you try to raise your standards, your mind brings up the past as evidence of why you shouldn't. It says, remember last time, remember when you failed, remember how that ended. That voice isn't trying to hurt you. It's trying to keep you from risk, but growth always requires stepping beyond what feels safe. Here's the truth most people need to hear. You are not required to live at the level of your worst day. You are not obligated to repeat patterns just because they're familiar. And you don't owe consistency to a version of yourself that no longer fits who you are becoming. When you wake up and say, today I hold myself to a higher standard, you are not denying your past. You're contextualizing it. You're saying, I've learned, and now I choose better. Standards are not about perfection. They're about direction. They give your day a framework. They tell you what you tolerate, what you commit to, and what you no longer accept from yourself. Too many people confuse self-compassion with self-excuse. Being kind to yourself does not mean lowering your standards. It means holding yourself accountable without tearing yourself down. You can acknowledge that yesterday was hard and still expect more from yourself today. Those two things can exist at the same time. Think about the people you respect the most. They're not perfect. They've failed. They've struggled. But at some point, they decided that their future deserved better standards than their past habits. And that decision changed how they showed up, even on days when it would have been easier to fall back into old patterns. Every morning is a reset button, but only if you choose to use it. If you wake up and immediately identify with yesterday's emotions, yesterday's mistakes, yesterday's disappointments, you've already limited today's potential. But if you wake up and say, that was then, this is now, you create space for change. Raising your standards doesn't mean doing everything at once. It means doing one thing differently today. It means choosing effort over avoidance, honesty over comfort, action over excuses. Over time, those small decisions stack up, and eventually you look back and realize you are no longer the person you used to be. And here's the part that matters most. Your future is not built by what you regret. It's built by what you repeat. So if you want a different outcome, you must commit to different standards, especially when no one is watching. You don't need a new past to create a better future. You just need the courage to stop letting yesterday decide who you are today. Most people think confidence is something you're born with or something you magically wake up with one day. They look at confident people and assume they just believe in themselves more. But confidence doesn't start in your mind. It starts in your behavior. And more specifically, it starts with whether or not you keep the promises you make to yourself. Every time you say you're going to do something and you don't do it, something small but important breaks inside you. You might not notice it right away, but your brain does. It keeps score. And the message it records is simple. My words don't mean much. Over time, that turns into hesitation, self-doubt, and a lack of trust in yourself. Not because you're incapable, but because you've trained yourself not to listen to your own commitments. On the flip side, every time you follow through on something you said you would do, even something small, you strengthen your self-trust. You're teaching your nervous system that you are reliable. And that reliability becomes confidence. Not loud, not flashy, but calm and grounded. The kind of confidence that doesn't need validation because it's built on evidence. This is why confidence can't be faked for long. You can tell yourself positive affirmations all day, but if your actions don't back them up, your mind won't believe you. Real confidence is the result of alignment. When what you say and what you do start matching, your self-belief grows naturally. Most people try to build confidence by aiming big. They make massive promises. I'm going to completely change my life. I'll never mess this up again. I'll start doing everything perfectly. And then when they inevitably fall short, their confidence takes another hit. Not because they failed, but because the promise was unrealistic. Confidence isn't built by grand declarations. It's built by small, consistent follow-through. Think about it like this. If someone constantly promised you things and never delivered, would you trust them? Of course not. You'd start to doubt their word. The same thing happens internally. When you stop trusting yourself, you hesitate, you second guess. You avoid commitment altogether because part of you doesn't believe you'll follow through anyway. That's why keeping small promises is so powerful. Saying, I'll go for a 10-minute walk, and then actually doing it. Saying, I'll send that email today and sending it. Saying, I'll wake up when my alarm goes off and getting up. These moments may seem insignificant, but they're not. They're deposits into your confidence account. And here's what most people don't realize: confidence is quiet. It doesn't announce itself. It shows up in how you carry yourself, how you speak, and how you handle pressure. It's the calm certainty that you can figure things out because you've proven to yourself that you show up even when it's uncomfortable. Keeping promises to yourself also creates momentum. When you follow through once, it becomes easier to do it again. Your brain starts to associate action with safety instead of threat. Resistance decreases. Self-doubt loses its grip, and gradually you stop needing external motivation or approval to move forward. This is especially important in the morning. The first promise you keep each day sets the tone for everything else. When you start the day by honoring a commitment, no matter how small, you reinforce the identity of someone who follows through. And that identity influences every decision that comes after. Confidence doesn't mean you never feel fear. It means you don't let fear stop you. And that strength doesn't come from hype. It comes from history. From knowing deep down that when things get hard, you don't disappear. You stay, you try, you finish what you start. The goal isn't to be perfect. It's to be consistent. It's better to be the person who keeps one small promise every day than the person who makes big promises once a month. Over time, those small wins stack up. And one day, you look back and realize that the version of you who doubted themselves doesn't exist anymore. So if you want real confidence, stop asking yourself how to feel confident and start asking yourself what promise you can keep today. Because every promise you keep is proof that you can trust yourself. Every morning gives you a choice. You can wake up and let old thoughts, old habits, and old stories run the day, or you can decide who you are going to be before the world gets a vote. The words you speak to yourself shape your identity. The discipline you practice determines your direction. The standards you choose decide your future. And the promises you keep build the confidence to sustain it all. Nothing changes all at once, but everything changes one morning at a time. When you start your day with intention instead of reaction, you stop drifting and start leading your own life. You don't need a perfect plan, more time, or more motivation. You just need to show up differently when you wake up. So tomorrow morning, before you reach for your phone, before the noise begins, tell yourself the truth that moves you forward, and then live like you believe it, because the way you start your morning is the way you shape your life.